right, I got good stuff for you tonight, for you to see, and just a heads up, even I guess before the court finds out. I guess the cat's already out of the bag because I understand that Beacon and Bay County scooped me again. I'm getting tired of it. Yeah. What's Bernie saying? Well, let's find out what Beacon of Bay County on Facebook is saying first. But that's okay. We need more people. We need more people, more citizen journalists telling the truth and showing evidence and building relationships and developing sources and reporting what they see. And if you're not following the Beacon of Bay County, you're missing out. But yeah, I am told James Finch is launching a big civil lawsuit tomorrow against some of the people who damaged him tremendously. I think who had the swords out lacerating the whistleblowers. They all banded together like mean kids at a playground. You got the press working with the federal prosecutors. You got the FBI working with the sheriff's office, and God knows who they're all working with. But they had their two sacrifices, and they were very confident that it would be handled. But now, turns out none of it was true. None of the 79 accusations, none of them were true. And so tomorrow, I guess, let the games begin. A lawsuit. Not only was his reputation more than damaged, but his business has lost a lot of business. You say, Bernie, he's rich enough. Okay. All right. I think the way civil lawsuits work, discovery is incredible. The things that are going to be the documents that will be obtained, the depositions under oath, it's going to be super interesting to find out what really happened and who really did a lot of this. Tomorrow morning, it's supposed to be filed. And if it is, I'm going to share it with you after the Beacon of Bay County, I'm sure. But also, I want to share with you some testimony from the retrial last week. And it's pretty amazing because one of the big questions is, there was a city manager who was hired in Lynn Haven in July of 2017. And his name was Michael White. Michael White's now in prison, right? And how did Michael White get the job? Because about a year and a half or so afterward, he was arrested for pointing a gun at his wife's head. Now, he told the jury last week that the gun wasn't loaded. But this is a city manager who was fixing tickets, who was working with the police chief, Ricky Ramey, to falsely arrest people, which Ricky Ramey still does. The chief of police falsely arrests people, and the prosecution drops it after they torment the ever-living out of these people. So how did this city manager, Michael White, get this job? This is a guy who, under his own testimony and others in the courtroom, this is a guy who suffered from being bipolar. He was a raging alcoholic. He was forced to resign or be fired from his previous job will somebody write down what it was? It was the co-op. They call it the co-op. What was that again? I'm looking at your comments. So Michael White and Chris Forehand, they work together. Chris Forehand is the city contracted engineer. Now, I'm only telling you exactly what I heard in the trial and what's in the transcripts that I'm about to show you. So, the two key people here that we're going to talk about Michael White, who did that, pointed a gun at his wife's head and was raging out, all this stuff. Having the police chief falsely arrest people, it goes on and on and on and on with this guy. But that was his character for a long time. It's not like he just flipped out. It's just who he was, Michael White. And how do you get the job, though? Because before Michael White, there was a city manager by the name of Joel Schubert, who, if nothing else, is very capable. Everybody says he's very capable. And he wanted to move over to the county, so he moved to the county, and that left that position open. And Lynn Haven hired Michael White. And after he pointed the gun to his wife's head, evidently the Mayor Pro Tem, Dan Russell, had the drunk Michael White at his house, went and got him because they're buddies. See, Michael White, Mayor Pro Tem at the time, Dan Russell, who the documents say got his house cleaned by ECS, but he's got some sort of protection. And he was sort of sheltering him in place after that happened. I mean, and then he wasn't, at the meetings talking about, we've got a big problem here. Everybody was covering for this guy, Michael White. And then after they got all the hurricane, after the Hurricane Michael, he couldn't keep his hand out of the cookie jar. He also got a 40 cal pistol from Chief Ramey, who took the pistol out of the evidence box, out of the evidence locker, because Michael White wanted a handgun. So yeah, here's one. Now, when asked about that on the witness stand last year, it was December of 2021, I think, when he was asked about it on the witness stand, the police chief said, that's common. Every law enforcement agency takes guns out of the locker and we go shoot them. I've even given guns to judges. Chief Ramey said, I've even given guns to judges. To which the defense attorney, Guy Lewis, says, I don't know why you would say that. What I would have said is, which ones? Objection. There would have been an objection and the judge would have upheld it. What? This is the kind of thing that's going on in Lynn Haven now, right now, because the whistleblowers were persecuted. All right. So then Michael White gets indicted and now he's in prison. Okay. So how the hell did he get the job? Well, it's an amazing story. After having a history of this, they thought he was the right guy for the job. Why would they think that? I'm going to show you why they thought that. You're going to see the transcripts from last week's testimony right after this. Don't let back pain and neck pain get you down. Find relief at Brown Chiropractic Center on St. Andrews Boulevard in Panama City. Dr. Sherry Brown helps people heal naturally with chiropractic adjustments and deep tissue massage. Call 769-3777.
Have you received a speeding ticket for which you want no points placed onto your driving record? I'm El Saulene, 850-215-0628. Let me help you.
Okay, here we go. So these are the transcripts from the retrial. All right. So this is the prosecutor asking the questions, and this is Chris Forehand, the city contracted engineer for Lynn Haven, who owns Panhandle Engineering. Remember, this is the prosecutors. They're first up. So they just called Chris Forehand, just walked up, explained who he is and what he does. And he's a witness for the prosecution against James Finch. Okay. How do you know Michael White? I first met him when he worked for Gulf Coast Electric. That's the co-op I was trying to remember. Approximately 1997, 98 timeframe. Did you have anything to do with him getting the job at Lynn Haven? Chris Forehand said, yes, I helped him. How did you help him? Well, I just talked to a few of the commissioners and told them that I had worked with him for several years. Did you set up any meetings for him with anyone? Chris Forehand says, I think he may have had a couple of lunches with some of the commissioners. Prosecutors say, I want to show you government's Exhibit 10R, which I don't think has been admitted into evidence. So that means he can't put it on the screen. He has to walk over and show it only to Chris Forehand and not the jury, which he does. And the prosecutor asks Chris Forehand of Panhandle Engineering, is this an immunity agreement? Yes. You signed this with the government? Yes. What do you understand it to provide you? And Chris Forehand says, it provides me immunity for any issues relative to the world claim insurance issue. Now, the world claim insurance issue was one of the 5 or 6 major charges, elements of charges brought against. Okay, there we go. I see what happened. Okay, sorry about that. How long was I off? Hopefully I was okay. I see. All right, so I'm back. New driver, it provides me. So world claim was one of the issues, and a bunch of people, or I don't know, but some people evidently got people in important positions got free insurance, and it was offered to Mayor Anderson, and Mayor Anderson said, no, that's not something I can take. So they had to drop it against her, but other people got immunity. So then the prosecutor says, okay, and you said the world claim insurance issue. What are you referring to? Now the defense says, objection. We're only here about a $5,000 check that James Finch wrote to Antonius Barnes. We're not here to talk about all the other stuff, the orgy of innuendo that you dropped because it wasn't true. So the judge says, sidebar, let's talk. And here's what we could not hear, but it's in the transcript. All right, so the judge says, brings them up, the sidebar, and the judge says, hold on a second. And we can't hear this now, but they're up there talking. If y'all could just go sidebar briefly, we can probably make this simple. The judge says, and he says, just tell me, to the prosecutor, what is it that you wanted? It may be confined to and limited, so it may not matter. The prosecutor says, I'm just trying to draw the sting a little bit, Judge. The what? The prosecutor says, the sting. I mean, he's going to be, I imagine he's going to be cross-examined about world claim. And the judge said, so you're just doing anticipatory rebuttal? And the prosecutor says, no, I'm just trying to, and the judge says, rehabilitation? In other words, it's assumed that the defense attorney is going to cross-examine and ask tough questions, and the prosecutor is just trying to take some of that sting out, is what he was saying. And the judge says, I'm sorry, the word rebuttal should not have been in there. It was anticipatory rehabilitation. And the judge says, regardless of the anticipatory rehabilitation, what we're not going to do here today is get into the nitty-gritty of a bunch of other claims. I'm just trying to figure out, you've gotten immunity, he says to the prosecutor. You've gotten immunity for Chris Forehand. So nobody can prosecute you. That's fine. You've already done that. And he's talking to the prosecutor like, we get it, And the judge says, I'm not sure, since he didn't need his recollection refreshed, why you had to show him the document and so forth. Are you trying to introduce the document? And the prosecutor says, I was going to, Your Honor. And the judge says, well, that would have been the first step. Any objection to that document coming in? The defense attorney says, I don't think it's relevant. The witness, Chris Forehand, only has immunity as to world claim. I'm not going to ask him about world claim, the defense attorney says. World claim is a whole different investigation. Judge says, hold on a second. So what's the rule? What's that? What were you going to elicit from him as to the scope of that investigation? I mean, obviously, I've heard the other testimony. I've heard allegations about Mr. Forehand and Mr. White so far. So what? Grogan says, the prosecutor, if I may, Judge, I think he may be a little bit mistaken. This is broader than world claim. The prosecutor tells the judge at the sidebar. One of the things that prompted them to ask for it, but it's, that's interesting. So this is broader than world claim. I don't know what the prosecutor is telling the judge there. This is broader than world. Does it mean, well, I asked Chris Forehand, and he told me that his immunity is limited to world claim, the insurance. So the prosecutor is saying, I think he might be a bit mistaken. I don't understand this. So they're still over there whispering by the sidebar, the judge and the lawyers. That's one of the things that prompted them to ask for it. World claims one of the things that prompted Chris Forehand to ask for immunity, and then the judge interrupts again. All right, so he's got immunity. It's still, what's the exception to hearsay for the document? And the prosecutor says, it's not a document offered for its truth. It's again, the judge interrupts. That's being offered for immunity. What's it being offered for? And the prosecutor says, it's just being offered to show that he does have some, Chris Forehand, he's gotten the benefit from the government when we're trying to, and again, the judge interrupts. So it's being offered for the truth that he's been offered immunity, so it's hearsay sustained. So all that, and the defense, he sustains the defense's objection. But he's already got immunity, says the judge, so that's fine. If they say you haven't been offered immunity, then you can introduce it in response. And then let's get to the next issue, the judge says, which is, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to get into with world claim? The prosecutor says, we don't need to get into anything, Judge. The judge says, well, you just asked him to describe world claim. You ever wondered what happens in the sidebar? This is it. I thought that was the last question pending. The defense says it was. A prosecutor says, we can move on, Judge. We don't need to belabor it. Judge says, all right, objections sustained. And then they get back on he gets back up there and we're back on now. Everybody can hear again. Judge says, I'm sorry, that document was. Prosecutor says, I'm sorry, Judge, it was 10R. Okay, so I'm going to skip down to the important things, all right, so that I don't get too much into the weeds here. But I am going to post all of this for you to see. So they're talking about the projects, the nitty-gritty of the projects. What are the ways that they get the project? What are the work have you done? How much do you get paid from the city? All this kind of stuff, okay? But we're going to get back to Michael White and how he was hired, because we know that the city contracted engineer, Chris Forehand, had something to do with it. All right, so here's cross-examination. All right, now the defense attorneys get their crack at the government witness, Chris Forehand. All right. Mr. Forehand, my name is Jennifer Lukemeyer, and I'm one of the lawyers for Mr. Finch. Good morning. Good morning. Now, this is the most important part. Are you ready for this? Can you see that? So the prosecution brings up Chris Forehand to convict James Finch for bribing Antonius Barnes with a $5,000 check. And the first question, boy, she gets right to it. As you stand here and testify before the jury, you have no relevant information as to the relationship or any bribery allegations between Antonius Barnes and Mr. Finch, do you? No. I mean, let's just, Let's just sit on that for a minute. Then why is he up there? Because the prosecutors had nobody with any evidence against Finch. Why did they do this? You know, I got to say, prosecutors, at least in America, when we had some semblance of the rule of law, they get promoted by one of the main things they get promoted by is their winning percentage. And you always say the feds have 98% winning percentage. And most of that is because most things people plead out, but it is really stacked in the federal system. It's much easier to defend yourself. You have much more avenues to pursue to defend yourself in a state case than you do in a federal case. It is stacked against you in a federal case. So why I mean, this is the same these are the same prosecutors, these two guys, that could not prosecute a former mayor, Andrew Gillum, who ran for governor. They lost that. Jury said not guilty. The jury, the first time they took a swing at the James Finch pinata, the jury didn't buy it. And this time the jury said not guilty. Why would you want to have three big losses like that? Why? So this probably would not have happened, you know, even 3 years ago. But I wonder if, and I'm just wondering now because I don't know why an upcoming prosecutor wants to have lose all the time. The best I can imagine, and this is only I'm just guessing here now, is maybe federal prosecutors get promoted for being agents of chaos now. Maybe that's the standard. How much chaos can you cause? That would be one way to get promoted if that's the standard now. I don't get it. It's crazy as hell. You ever get the feeling there's something going on and we're not in on it? All right, here you go. Back to this. All right. So you don't have any information about Finch bribing it? Nope. And you're here to testify. You testified about the business that was generated from the half-cent sales tax. All right, so it goes on. That was another one of the issues. The half-cent sales tax was another one of those issues. But let's get back to where he helped Michael White get a job. So you, in 2017, you spearheaded Michael White being hired by the city of Lynn Haven. Chris Foran says no. You suggested it? Yes. You were involved in it? Yes. So if you see the city contracted engineer, Chris Forhan, you can thank him for bringing Michael White to be the city manager. You vouched for him? Chris Forhan says yes. Okay, because you had a long-standing relationship with him? Yes. And you trusted Michael White? Yes. And as city manager and you're being the city engineer, that worked out well for Panhandle, didn't it? Yes. Okay, because your friend is essentially the gatekeeper of all the projects for the city of Lynn Haven. Not exactly, Chris Foran says. Not exactly. But he's pretty important in dictating what projects are done and how they're staffed and how they get in front of the commissioners to some degree. Okay, when you gave him a $3,500 Christmas gift. Now, remember, before Chris Forhan took the stand, Michael White was on the stand. They brought him out of prison and put him on the stand. And nobody believed him. The jury was like, prosecutors said, this is our key witness. And they brought Chris Forhan, I'm sorry, geez. They brought Michael White out of prison with handcuffs and leg shackles and prison garb and said, this is the guy you got to believe that heard James Finch say he was bribing Barnes. Nobody bought it. Nobody. And when they asked Michael White before Chris Forehand took the stand, I don't know why the audio went out, but I saw it. Thank you. Okay, let me catch you up. So the $3,500 Michael White was on the stand before Chris Foran, and Michael White told the jury, came out of prison with handcuffs and with leg shackles and prison garb. Michael White just told the jury, Chris Forehand brought me out to the pickup truck and gave me $3,500 as a Christmas gift. Okay. And then they bring him back to prison off the witness stand, the best witness they've got, Michael White. And then right away, Chris Forehand comes in and they're talking about the same thing, the same $3,500 in cash that Chris Forehand gave to Michael White. And you can read that there, right? You gave him the Christmas gift in your truck because he was doing a good job. Chris Forehand says no, but you did give him that. And Chris Forehand clarified, I gave him that for putting together a corporate handbook. Okay, but you gave him cash. Yes. Was it $100 bills? Yes. Was it in an envelope? Yes. Did he give you a receipt? No. Was it at the city offices? No, it was at lunch. Okay, and did you do it? Where were you lunching? I believe at Sonny's. Okay, and did you say here, Mike, here's an envelope, and you didn't do it in a restaurant, did you? Yes, he asked me for cash. And so you didn't call him out of the truck to go to the truck to give it to him. No. Now the jury starts like looking at each other like, whoa. The last dude just said it was a Christmas gift that he gave him in a truck. And Chris Forehand is saying it was for a corporate handbook. I gave it to him at Sonny's in the restaurant. So the jury's going, hey, government, these witnesses you got here. Okay, so the defense says, so if there was testimony that that's how it went down in a truck, and it was a Christmas gift, that was a lie? Chris Forehand said that is. And if there's been testimony, it was because it was a Christmas gift, that would be a lie? That's correct. Chris Forehand said absolutely. Chris Forehand said it was not a Christmas gift. It was for the corporate handbook. Do you recall when it was that you provided $3,500 cash? I don't remember exactly. And you're here testifying today that it was for putting together a manual, a corporate handbook. For whom? For my company, Panhandle Politics, Panhandle Engineering. So this was a side deal he was doing? Yes. Now look at this next line. Read that next line, the second red underline. He was doing work for many companies, putting together their corporate handbooks. I mean, I feel like we should just sit on this just absorb this for a moment. Why isn't Sheriff Tommy Ford asking how many corporate handbooks there are out there? I mean, the FBI never even asked to see it. By the way, got to tell you this. So a couple of days ago, I called Chris Forehand, all right, and I asked him about the corporate handbook. Okay, he stepped out at dinner. He didn't know I was going to call him, so kind of caught him off guard. And he was nice enough to answer my call. And I said, I just got a few questions, Chris, about the corporate handbook. Was it digital? Did Michael White create this corporate handbook in a digital form or in paper? Digital. Okay. Did you ever implement it? Yes. Um, are you still using this corporate handbook? Yes. And can I see it? Yes, you can see it. Can you email it to me? Sure. Great. All right, cool. Um, and Chris said, I really wish that this, we could just move on. There's families involved. You know, I don't like talking about families at all, but you can imagine anybody who's implicated in this in any way. Like it's not, you don't want to hear things about your family, but this is public interest stuff. The story has to be told because, how many corporate handbooks are there? He was doing work for many companies, putting together their corporate handbooks. Okay. The crazy thing is, you remember how I always say, one of the most important qualities for a reporter or a journalist or a watchdog or law enforcement or prosecutors is what? Curiosity. Do you know that Sheriff Tommy Ford and the Public Trust Unit, the FBI, nobody asked for the court. I'm the only person who's ever asked for the corporate handbook. Now, don't you find that weird? So Chris said, yeah, I'll email it to you. And so part of the reason I didn't do a show last night, it also was Halloween. And so I sent him an email again saying, hey, just a reminder, if you could shoot me over the corporate handbook. And he had told me that Michael White had created the corporate handbook initially at the co-op, at the electric, whatever the hell I can never remember what it is. Before he got forced out for, I guess, sexual harassment, which Chris Forehand knew the guy got forced out for sexual harassment, knew he was a raging alcoholic, knew he was bipolar, knew he had a lot of problems, but still Chris Forehand said, hey, Lynnhaven, this is the guy for you. And once Michael White became the city manager, you just saw the testimony. It was real good for him. Until Michael White got drunk again and pointed a gun at his wife's head. It was not loaded, though. That's what he told the jury. And that's when, Mayor Pro Tem Dan Russell grabbed Michael White and said, buddy, just hang here. Now, don't you think a responsible city councilman, instead of hiding the guy out who just pointed a gun at his wife's head, might have gotten involved with law enforcement, and instead of working with Chris Forehand and Ricky Ramey and these guys, maybe they could have said this guy might not be the best guy for the job, but they didn't do that. Eventually, it was such a big deal. More and more people found out about it that, they had to rat their friend Michael White out, and Michael White ended up getting arrested by the sheriff's office, I believe, because Ricky Ramey said it would be a conflict of interest. And one thing Ricky Ramey doesn't want to do is ever arrest somebody for the wrong reason. Chief Ricky Ramey. So lots of corporate handbooks. No law enforcement is asked. I'm the only person evidently asked to see it. So Chris Forehand, after I reminded him today, said, I've decided I'm not going to give you a copy of the corporate handbook, but you are welcome to come look at it. I said, thank you, Chris. So I'm hoping that tomorrow afternoon I can go take a look at this corporate handbook that was that Michael White originally created for the co-op while he was working for this other company. He created it for that company. So basically, it seems to me that this corporate handbook that he created while he was an employee of this co-op is the intellectual property of the co-op, right? But a few years later, Michael White was taking, according to Chris Forehand, was taking this corporate handbook and just tweaking it a bit for all these other companies that were paying Michael White for corporate handbooks. Yeah, you just change a word here, you panhandle engineering, don't do this, don't do that, And so it's just weird to me. It just seems like that corporate handbook would not have been, even though Michael White wrote it, he wrote it for it's the intellectual property of the co-op. I mean, it's just a lot of questions here, but none of them occurred to the sheriff or the FBI or anybody like that. Nobody. Watch, I'll show you. So let's get back to this. All right. All right. See that? It was a side deal he was doing, Michael White. Yes, he was doing work for many companies. And by the way, I did ask Chris Forehand what other companies, and he didn't know. He didn't know who the other companies were that were all these companies that were getting corporate handbooks. But evidently, it was a really good side deal for Michael White. But and I should tell you, honestly, if any of you would like a corporate handbook from me, we can meet anytime you want at a restaurant, and it'll be my intellectual property, and you can have it for an envelope of cash. All right. I just want to make sure, since this is I didn't know this was a niche industry around here, and boy, we could use it at the Liberty Lounge. So just hit me up to do business with the city of Lynn Haven. No, this corporate handbook, Chris Forehand said, was not about the city of Lynn Haven. You were giving him money while he was the city manager. Yes. Did he have a contract to do that corporate handbook? No. And he didn't give you a receipt? No. And he was going to do work for Panhandle he was just getting paid for? Yes. Do you know whether he reported that? Hey, I've got this side contract with Panhandle Engineering, who also does business with our city contractually as well as internally. Did he report that? I don't know. I mean, what do I know? That would be required to be reported, wouldn't it? I don't know. Your company does a lot of business with municipalities, right? Yes. I mean, Chris Forehand, Panhandle Engineering is the guy. Either that or County Commissioner Robert Carroll. He's the engineer of record. Usually cities go back and forth between Commissioner Robert Carroll or Chris Forehand. Throw up a cover bid one time there, Robert. I'll throw up one next time, baby. It's a good system. Nice work if you can get it. So anyway, your company does a lot of business with me. Yes, it's a pretty regulated process. Yes, it is. And part of that regulation is to make sure there are no conflicts. See, when Chris Forehand knew Michael White so well that he suggested in 2017, this is the guy to replace Joel Schubert after Joel Schubert went to the county. He vouched for his character. And I mean, if there's anybody who would be qualified to write a corporate handbook, which would include, stuff about ethics, well, it's my boy Mike, eminently qualified to write a corporate handbook about ethics and contracts and conflicts of interest and all that stuff. Wouldn't you agree? Did you ever provide a copy of that corporate handbook to the government? No. Did you ever tell them about it, being the FBI or Sheriff Ford's office, because Sheriff Ford's public trust unit? I mean, Sheriff Ford and the FBI, remember when they stood up at these big press conferences and And they talked about how this was ongoing and they were going to clean up. I was told even if the FBI stopped working at it, Sheriff Ford was going to clean the town up. They had all the evidence on everybody. But did you ever provide a copy of that corporate handbook to the government? No. Did you ever tell them about it? Yes. I did tell them about it. Did they ask for it? Look at that. Look at that answer. Look at that answer. Bernie Thompson's the only one who asked for the corporate handbook? Deputize me. Give me a corporate handbook to study so I know the ethics around here. Just pay me $3,500 every time we go to lunch, and then I will absolutely run it down. We've got a very uncurious investigation going on. It does seem to me.
You want to look good? You want to feel good? Little John's Big and Tall is where it's at. Right across the street from Sky's Pizza Pie, 5700 North Davis Highway. You can find out more online at littlejohnsbigandtall.com. He's also a member of the iTex trading community, where your iTex dollars are welcome.
It's a hot time in Florida, and my friend Ryan could make sure your air conditioning is running at peak efficiency. He could even install a new one, built to a higher standard, American standard. Find out more at pcairrepair.com.
All right. So then the jury who had just heard Michael White, remember, right before Chris Foran, the jury had just heard Michael White say, the reason I left the co-op was I just resigned is all. But you resigned because you were under pressure from a sexual harassment allegation or something like that? No, I just resigned is all. All right. So now Chris Forehand, remember the jury just heard that. Now Chris Forehand's going to explain why he's not working there anymore. And when Mr. White he resigned from the co-op, the Gulf Coast Electric Co-op, right? Yes. And you knew exactly why? Yes. And he didn't just resign because a better opportunity came across, did he? No. Chris Forehand's telling the truth. He resigned under pressure for some pretty serious allegations. Yes. And you still sent him over to the city of Lynn Haven and said, hire him? No. Well, you suggested and you vouched for him, didn't you? Yes. Knowing his history at that point? Yes. Nothing further. So at this point, prosecutors just heard all that, and they're sitting there going, oh, man. I mean, they're sitting there, these guys, that was our second best witness. That was their second best witness after Michael White. Do you hear me? WMBB would have you believe they had James Finch, the proof that he did. These were their best witnesses. WMBB. All right. They've been lying to you. So, okay. So now after the cross-examination by the defense, the prosecutors get another crack at this. They get another chance to go up there and say, hold on, jury, hold on. Let's straighten a few things up here. So the judge says, redirect. The prosecutors look at each other. May I have a moment, Your Honor? Said the prosecutor. Certainly. And the prosecutors whisper there at the table, and the prosecutors say, no questions. That's what happened. And so now there might not have been any questions for the prosecutors, but now I'm sitting here with a ton of questions. I mean, I got all kinds of questions. The sheriff's office didn't have any questions. The FBI didn't have any questions. but at least I'll get one of my questions halfway answered since Chris Forn has invited me to take a look at the corporate handbook. At least I could maybe, initially he said I could get a copy of it, but now he doesn't want to give me a copy of it. But I am invited to take a look at it. So I'll try to like burn it, etch it in my brain, and maybe as soon as I get in my car, I'll draw a sketch of it, kind of like I'm in a federal courtroom. And I'll describe what it looks like, the corporate handbook that Michael White made for a bunch of companies. That's all I got. I am so far behind telling you about Mexico Beach. God, I got a lot of things. And that's what I plan to do, by the way, is catch you up on Mexico Beach and Panama City Beach. The stuff going on in Mexico Beach is insane. And you okay, so we always ask, how do they get away with it? How do they get away with it? You know, I am no Sherlock Holmes, but I think I have an idea, because law enforcement doesn't ask questions. They find out this corporate handbook's flying around, and it's not worth looking at. A bunch of them. At least I want, hey, you know what? One thing I do not want to do, and we can nip it in the bud, and that's what Chris Forehand at least is going to let me do tomorrow, because he pointed out it's not illegal to pay somebody in cash, Bernie. And that's true. Right? So at least I get to see it, and there won't be all this speculation about what it looks like. At least I get to see it. So at least Chris Forehand's nipping it in the bud best he can, and showing that it's on the up and up. But it's not a big town we live in. I say town, big. I mean, it's a contractor's small community. I bet you that there are contractors who are watching the show or will see the show and who work with Chris Forehand as the engineer. I mean, he's a big engineer, man. This guy gets he hires a lot of contractors, man. Everybody knows Chris Forehand. And so there's got to be other companies, like what maybe C.W. Roberts, maybe, or I got to ask James Finch if he ever paid for a corporate hand. No, he couldn't have, because they did ask him. In fact, they asked everybody. Did James Finch ever pay you for it? No. Did he ever bribe you? Mm-mm. Did you ever get any cash? Not from him, only from the government witnesses. Oh my God. But here's my point. There's got to be, if there were all these companies hiring Michael White for this valuable corporate handbook that was sort of a rescribble from the co-op one that he made originally, tweak it here and there and tailor it for any of these companies. I don't know. Hell, did Commissioner Robert McNeil Carroll, did they get a corporate handbook from Michael White? Did they pay him for one? I need to know. So Chris Forehand's nipping it in the bud, but if you know other companies that got a corporate handbook from Michael White, since there were a lot of them, but nobody can remember names of who they were, though. Let me know who else got corporate handbooks from Michael White, because I just want to see these corporate handbooks and describe them to you so that we all know it's on the up and up. It's not illegal to hire anybody and pay them with cash. But I mean it. I don't know. I guess I might have to send a bunch of emails out to all these folks. What about Dewberry? Did Dewberry get a corporate handbook? What about Ace Hardware in Mexico Beach? Al Cathy, the former mayor, did he get a corporate handbook? Who are some of the other big companies? What about ZHS? Did they get a corporate handbook? I don't know. I want to see them. It's a good gig if Michael White just had to tailor it a little bit, don't you think? Want to tell you this, and I hope you see the end of this because what's going on, the boondoggle going on in Panama City Beach is quite remarkable. Check this out. Look at this, please. Listen to this and tell me what you think. And by the way, what you're going to see is a listener sponsored ad, not really ad, listener sponsored news segment. If you know of an issue that you think needs more attention, if and only if, honestly, because I'm not just going to accept any of them, it's something that I'm hot on. I will. I might make one of these for you. So this is a listener sponsored news segment. But look at this. Mayor Mark Sheldon is pushing for a $10 million pedestrian bridge to connect Frank Brown Park to Aaron Besant Park. It's great for music festivals. It's the city's #1 priority this year. They've got a bunch of projects, and they plan to spend $236 million. 2 years ago, the budget for the city was only $42 million. That's why locals are paying so much more in assessments to the city. Mayor Sheldon says it's worth it. After all, he owns Gulf Coast Jam. The city's #1 priority will benefit his music festivals. He wants more state and federal grant money as a slush fund.
These are significant projects that will make a huge difference in our community. The first is to pursue any available state aid for the planning, design, and environmental studies related to a pedestrian bridge connecting Aaron Besant Park and Frank Brown Park. This walkover would link these two public parks and provide a safer avenue for our residents.
Just about safety, a safer avenue for the residents. He owns Gulf Coast Jam. The TDC, the Tourist Development Council, have been giving him $1.5 million a year to start up the music festival since 2015. That's the longest seed money I've ever heard of in my life. Now, he wants to point out it's not that much anymore. Okay, there's no sand jam anymore, so you got to cut that in half. And I saw a news story where he's only getting $375,000 a year to market Gulf Coast Jam. But they don't mention if they still have the operating, that's another $350,000 or so, isn't it, Mayor? So it's like about $750, maybe $750,000 a year. Okay, but a man's got to eat. And putting on these new music festivals, yeah, they're selling out. So, I'm a bit of a corporate welfare queen, but Sheriff Ford's office likes the tickets now. Sheriff Ford's office is taking tickets, not directly from Gulf Coast Jam. It goes to somewhere else, and then that somewhere else gives it to Gulf Coast Jam, gives it to the sheriff's office. It is, kind of like how they do it on the other side of the thin blue line. I mean, we didn't get them directly from Mayor Sheldon. Anyway, that's going on. That's not enough for Mayor Sheldon. Now he wants a pedestrian walkover. I'm not even opposed to a pedestrian walkover, but I don't think it should be the #1 issue. And why do you think it is? Why do you think it's the #1 issue in Panama City Beach? You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. Did Gulf Coast Jam get a corporate handbook? I mean it. I'd like to know. Panhandle Strong, that nonprofit, did they get a corporate handbook? I don't know. Nobody asks questions around here but me. I guess I got to ask more people. Hey, I want to thank, as always, the Unknown Patriot for your support. Thank you so much for helping me bring this information to you. It matters a lot. And to all the patrons, and you can throw a tip in the tip jar if you want to as well, as little as $5 a month. And when a lot of people do it, that's called crowdfunding. And it matters. Thank you. Patreon.com/Bernie Thompson is where you can do that. It's every month. It's easy to quit. And you can stop at any time. That was redundant. And it's anonymous. So thank you, patrons. Those of you who put money in the tip jar. I appreciate it so much. All right, I'm gonna get out of here. I have so much to catch you up on in Mexico Beach. Oh, Mexico Beach and Panama City Beach. But I'll get it to you as soon as I can. Thanks for being with me.